Ethan Cole froze in the middle of the emergency room. Just seconds earlier, he had rushed through the sliding glass doors, his expensive shoes squeaking against the shining hospital floor. Now he stood still, his heart pounding so loudly that it almost drowned out the noise around him. Bright white lights burned above his head. Nurses moved quickly from one bed to another. A child was crying somewhere in the distance. Machines beeped in sharp, steady sounds. The air smelled of medicine and fear. Vanessa clung to his arm, her body trembling. Her face was pale, and her breathing was uneven. One of her hands pressed tightly against her stomach as if she was trying to stop the pain from spreading. Ethan had never seen her like this before. She had called him 20 minutes earlier, her voice shaking, saying she could not breathe and felt dizzy. Without thinking twice, he had left his office meeting, grabbed his car keys, and driven like a madman through the city traffic. "Help her!" he shouted as they reached the front desk. "She needs a doctor now." Two nurses hurried toward them with a wheelchair. Ethan carefully helped Vanessa sit down. She held his hand tightly, as if she was afraid he might disappear. He bent down, whispering, "You'll be fine. I'm here." But even he could hear the tension in his own voice. The nurses pushed her toward the treatment area. Ethan followed closely behind, his mind racing. He was not thinking about consequences. He was not thinking about secrets. He was only thinking about getting her help. Then, as he lifted his head, he saw her. Standing just a few steps away near the maternity reception desk was Sophia Cole, his wife. Her hand rested gently on her round, pregnant belly. A hospital file was tucked under her arm. Her long hair fell softly over her shoulders. She looked smaller than he remembered, but stronger somehow. Her eyes were fixed on him. Their gazes locked. For a moment, the noise of the emergency room disappeared. The crying child, the beeping machines, the rushing footsteps, everything faded into silence. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Sophia did not say a word. But the pain in her eyes said everything. And in that single, heavy moment, Ethan realized his world was about to shatter. Ethan Cole was a man who believed he controlled everything. At 38, he was one of the youngest billionaires in the city. He had built his business empire with sharp decisions, long nights, and fearless risks. People respected him. Employees feared disappointing him. Investors trusted him without question. He was confident, calm under pressure, and always 2 steps ahead of everyone else. In meetings, his voice never shook. In public, his smile never faded. Ethan was used to winning. But at home, things were different. Sophia Cole, his wife of 6 years, had once been the center of his world. She was gentle but strong, the kind of woman who believed in loyalty and quiet sacrifice. Now she was 7 months pregnant, carrying their first child. She moved more slowly these days, careful with each step, protective of the small life growing inside her. She still loved Ethan deeply. She still waited for him at dinner, even when he came home late. But lately, there had been a distance between them, an invisible wall built from silence and unspoken feelings. Ethan told himself it was just stress, business pressure, the responsibilities of fatherhood coming too fast. But the truth was more complicated. Vanessa entered his life a year ago. She was younger, emotional, and admired him openly. She listened to his frustrations and praised his success. Around her, he felt powerful again, not like a husband failing to connect, but like a man still desired and admired. What started as casual meetings slowly turned into a secret affair. Vanessa depended on him. On his money. On his attention. On his promises. And Sophia knew nothing. Or at least, that was what Ethan believed. While his marriage slowly grew cold and quiet, his double life grew riskier each day, until fate brought all 3 of them into the same emergency room under the bright, unforgiving hospital lights. That evening was supposed to be simple. Ethan had told Sophia that he had an important business dinner with foreign investors. She had nodded quietly, hiding her disappointment as she placed his tie straight and reminded him not to skip dinner. He kissed her forehead before leaving, avoiding her eyes for too long. He did not notice how her hand stayed resting on her stomach long after he walked out. But there was no business dinner. Ethan was with Vanessa in a private apartment he rented under another name. It was a place far from the city center, away from reporters and familiar faces. Vanessa liked it there. She said it felt like a secret world where no one could judge them. They had been arguing softly that night. Vanessa wanted more. More time. More promises. She was tired of hiding. She had started asking questions about his future, about divorce, about commitment. Ethan tried to calm her down, telling her it was complicated. He always used that word when he did not want to answer clearly. Suddenly, Vanessa stopped speaking. Her face lost color. She pressed her hand against her chest, struggling to breathe. "Ethan, I feel strange," she whispered. Her legs weakened, and she almost collapsed. For a second, he thought she was being dramatic. But then he saw the fear in her eyes. Her breathing became fast and uneven. Her body trembled. Panic rushed through him. He grabbed his keys and helped her to the car. Every red traffic light felt like an enemy. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as he drove toward the nearest hospital. His heart pounded, not just from fear for her health, but from something else. What if someone recognized him? What if Sophia somehow found out? The emergency room was the closest option. And in his desperate attempt to save one secret, Ethan unknowingly drove straight into another truth waiting to explode. Ethan's breath stopped the moment he saw her. Sophia stood near the maternity desk, one hand resting gently under her round belly. She wore a soft blue dress, simple and loose, the kind she preferred during her pregnancy. A medical file was pressed against her chest. She looked tired, but calm. Alone. He remembered suddenly, she had mentioned a late-night prenatal checkup earlier that week. He had barely listened. He had told her he was busy and could not make it. She had smiled and said it was fine. She was used to going alone. Now she was here. In the same hospital. In the same moment. Her eyes slowly lifted from the floor and met his. At first, confusion crossed her face. Then realization. Her gaze shifted slightly, to Vanessa sitting in the wheelchair, pale and holding Ethan's hand tightly. The silence between them felt louder than the noise around them. A nurse called out, "Vanessa Reed." Another voice shouted for a doctor in trauma room 3. A stretcher rushed past them. Machines beeped sharply. But none of it reached Ethan clearly. All he could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat. Sophia's fingers tightened around her file. She did not cry. She did not scream. Her face remained still, but something inside her eyes changed. Something fragile broke quietly. Vanessa followed Ethan's frozen stare. She turned her head slowly, and saw Sophia. Her grip on Ethan's hand loosened. "Who is she?" Vanessa whispered, though deep down she already knew the answer. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in his powerful, controlled life, he had no explanation ready. No strategy. No escape. Under the bright hospital lights, surrounded by strangers and shouting nurses, his two worlds had collided, and there was nowhere left to hide. Sophia was the first to move. She took a slow step forward, her hand still resting protectively over her belly. Her face remained calm, but her eyes held a quiet storm. She looked at Vanessa, then at Ethan, and then back at Vanessa again. She did not need anyone to explain anything. The truth was standing right in front of her. "So this is why you were busy," she said softly. Her voice did not shake. There was no anger in it. That somehow made it worse. Ethan finally found his breath. "Sophia, it's not what you think," he said quickly, stepping toward her. "She just wasn't feeling well. I was helping." "Helping?" Sophia repeated gently. She gave a small, sad smile. "You don't hold someone's hand like that unless it means something." Vanessa slowly pulled her hand away from Ethan's grip. Her eyes moved between them in confusion. "Wife," she whispered. "You told me things were almost over. You said you were distant, that it was complicated." Ethan felt the ground slipping under him. Sophia nodded slightly, as if pieces of a puzzle were finally fitting together. "I understand," she said quietly. "You don't need to say anything else." Her calmness was not weakness. It was dignity. It was the strength of a woman who had just watched her world crack but refused to break in public. Ethan reached out, but she stepped back. In that silent space between them, he realized she had already understood everything, without him saying a single word. Sophia looked at Ethan for a long moment. Not with anger. Not even with hatred. Just disappointment. It was the kind of look that made a man realize he had destroyed something pure. She adjusted the file in her hands and straightened her back. For a second, Ethan thought she might shout or demand answers. Instead, she spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I hope she recovers," she said softly, glancing at Vanessa. "No woman deserves to suffer." Her kindness felt like a knife. Then her eyes returned to Ethan. They were no longer filled with confusion. They were clear. Decided. "You were worried about her tonight," Sophia continued. "But remember this moment when our child asks one day where his father was." The words were quiet, but they hit harder than any scream. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Sophia, please, we can talk about this. Don't do this here." She gave a small nod. "You're right. Not here." For a brief second, hope flickered inside him. But then she added, "A hospital is for saving lives. Not broken promises." Without another word, she turned and began walking toward the exit. Her steps were slow but steady. She did not look back. Ethan stood frozen, watching the mother of his child walk away alone under the harsh white lights. He wanted to run after her. He wanted to fix everything. But his feet would not move. Vanessa sat quietly in the wheelchair, now understanding the full truth. She had never truly replaced Sophia. She had only been a hidden chapter. And as the sliding doors closed behind his wife, Ethan finally understood what he was losing. Some mistakes did not come with second chances. By the next morning, the weight of reality had settled heavily on Ethan's shoulders. As a billionaire, his life was never truly private. Cameras followed him. Business rivals watched for weakness. One small scandal could destroy years of hard-earned reputation. If anyone discovered he had been at the emergency room with another woman while his pregnant wife was there alone, the headlines would be ruthless. But for the first time, the media was not his biggest fear. The real silence waited at home. Sophia did not answer his calls that night. She did not send messages. When he finally returned to the house, her side of the closet was half empty. A quiet space where her presence used to be. She had not created drama. She had chosen dignity. A week later, official documents arrived at his office. Divorce papers. Vanessa, too, felt uncertain. She no longer looked at Ethan with admiration. Now she saw a man who could abandon loyalty. If he could betray his wife, what guarantee did she have? Ethan sat alone in his large office, surrounded by glass walls and city views. He had power. He had money. But he had never felt more alone. And Sophia, carrying his child, chose self-respect over comfort, proving that sometimes walking away is the strongest decision of all. Ethan sat alone in the long hospital corridor. The night was quiet now. The emergency room chaos had faded, replaced by the soft sounds of distant footsteps and machines working inside closed rooms. Somewhere nearby, a newborn baby's weak cry echoed before disappearing into silence. The sound made his chest tighten in a strange, painful way. He remembered Sophia's belly, the life growing inside her. A child who would carry his blood but might never truly know him the same way again. Ethan leaned his head back against the cold hospital wall. He thought about everything he had achieved in life. The business empire. The luxury cars. The respect people showed when they heard his name. The power he once believed was everything. But success could not sit beside him in a dark hospital corridor. Success could not hold his hand. Success could not forgive him. A man could build the greatest kingdom in the world, Ethan realized, but still lose the one home his heart truly needed. He closed his eyes as a single tear escaped silently. Because in the end, wealth and power were only shadows if they were built on broken trust. And sometimes, the most expensive mistake a man could make was not losing money, but losing the woman who once loved him unconditionally.